As we get further and further from free agency, the NHL trade market continues to swirl. Even though we saw a ton of trades to start out this offseason, there's still a few teams out there with incomplete rosters that are still looking to make some major moves. And today we're going to be breaking down the latest trade rumors surrounding Vancouver being linked to Shane Wright, Elias Pettersson potentially going the other way, and Hellebuyck linked to both San Jose and Colorado. There's a lot to go over today, so make sure you guys watch till the end for all my thoughts, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the summer. And without further ado, let's get into the trade rumor talk here, presented by PrizePicks. Okay, let's start out today's video of Shane Wright, who is someone that has been a topic of trade conversation for a while now, but things have started to ramp up considerably. A couple weeks back, we got confirmation that Shane Wright and the Kraken agreed to trade him this summer. It was just a matter of where and when it would actually happen. And we've started to see a lot more news surrounding Wright recently, especially with the teams that could be interested, and the main team here seems to be the Vancouver Canucks. We had this quote from Ben Kuzma pointing towards Shane Wright's interest in Vancouver, saying that they've learned Vancouver is Shane Wright's preferred destination. A lot of this comes down to the younger players he could be playing with in Vancouver, as well as the big opportunity the Canucks will have up the middle. A chance for Shane Wright to play top 6 minutes almost immediately. Especially if the Canucks trade Elias Pettersson, which seems more and more likely by the day, the Canucks center group needs some more reinforcements. I mean, you got Marco Rossi, who I like quite a bit, and Filipino, when healthy, is a strong offensive player, but I do think they're lacking some surety and a great young up-and-coming piece that can play in the NHL now. When you look at Braden Coots, when you look at Caleb Malhotra, I think both of those guys are still at least 1 year away, especially in the case of Malhotra. I think you need a bit of a stopgap before those guys come in. And I do think it would be a good place for a Shane Wright who could ultimately play first-line center minutes, especially if Pettersson doesn't get dealt. They could have Pettersson on the wing potentially, and even when those centers that the Canucks have coming up are in their prime, I still think Shane Wright probably fits as the second-line center in that group. If the Canucks really like Caleb Malhotra, they'll probably have him as the first-line center, Braden Coots as a 3C, and Shane Wright on that second line. But considering the lack of opportunity that Shane Wright has gotten in Seattle, this would certainly be an upgrade, and I do feel like even though the Kraken are a stronger team, Wright has an interesting curve here once the Canucks become a lot better to become a core part of that team, which it just doesn't feel like he's going to be with the Kraken. And it is a shame because I still think last year he was trending in a really great direction. Popped 44 points in his first full NHL season, getting 19 goals and 25 assists. This year, though, the role was just all over the place, mostly playing on the bottom 6, and I think his production and his development was stagnated because of that, and only got 27 points and 12 goals in 74 games. Simply put, I think Shane Wright just needs a change of scenery, and I think he needs just a stronger opportunity. It's kind of a shame that he wasn't given more second line opportunities in Seattle, because I think he would have done pretty great in those minutes. But for a team like Vancouver, who has all the opportunity to give, a Shane Wright especially will be a great fit for this next year. But with how young Shane Wright still is, with the pedigree he's had in the NHL already, I think that's a pretty good mix for a Canucks team that is trending as young as they are. He will be one of the older players of that group, but will give them a little bit more surety and a bit more of a veteran presence once those really young guys come into the Vancouver system. Plus, I don't think Wright is elite enough to get them out of the rebuild over the next couple of seasons, but will be a big part of that team once they start to turn a page. The issue is, what does that trade actually look like in the end? Because we have heard that the Shane Wright asking price from Seattle is astronomical. This coming from Canucks insider Rick Dhaliwal, the Canucks really do like Shane Wright. They approached Seattle about him, but the ask was very high. You know Seattle wants either Buem or Tom Willander. And I like Shane Wright a ton. I still think he brings a lot of potential as a great second line C, but I think this is kind of ridiculous. A Tom Willander I still think is a bit much for Shane Wright, especially for a team like Vancouver that wants to build through their defense, but a Z Buem should be off the table entirely. Unless the Kraken are adding so many prospects on top of Wright, I don't see that happening in any way. So I think the logical situation here is that Shane Wright probably isn't going to be traded in the foreseeable future, but I could see later into this offseason the Kraken kind of budging with their asking price, because I quite frankly don't think anybody is going to give that type of offer to Seattle. Also, for the Canucks, you have 2 second-round picks in the next 2 draft classes, so I would assume one of those at the very least goes in a part of that trade as well. But that leads us on to a Canucks forward that could pretty easily be traded this summer and is starting to get a lot more traction lately, and that is Elias Pettersson, who is always going to be a hard contract to deal because of how massive that contract is. At $11.6 million, for any team to take him on to begin with is a major risk. And even though I think Elias Pettersson at his worst is still a pretty great top 6C who brings great defensive habits, you don't want 50-point Elias Pettersson. You want 100-point Elias Pettersson, who's bringing back that confidence and that pace to his game that just hasn't quite been there over the last 2 seasons or so. Now, for me personally, I don't think we're going to get back to those 100-point lengths in Pettersson's case unless he's around some gargantuanly dominant team or something, but I still think he can be around a point per game while bringing in the defensive habits that he's really leaned into over the past couple of seasons. He's been blocking shots like crazy, and even though I want to see him be a bit more physical in his game, that's really, I think, the only major issue. Getting that confidence back, though, offensively will be the main priority for any team that goes after it. Now, I have seen some people speculating that maybe we would see an Elias Pettersson for Shane Wright swap in a deal. I think there would be a lot more moving parts on top of that, but I do think the blueprint is intriguing. Again, for a Kraken team that would be training a center, even though they already have their locked-in Beniers at number 1C, Pettersson is maybe a second-line C or even a wing option could be intriguing, even if I think for Seattle, him as a center is the way to go. Now, we did get this info from Elliot Friedman linking him to another team as well, saying, does what happened with these salaries rising change the conversation for him? We talked about Pittsburgh. I think we all feel he needs a change of scenery. There has been a lot of fire to the flame around the Pittsburgh Penguins as a potential Pettersson fit, and quite frankly, I think the Penguins are one of those teams that likes to take those type of risks, and with the cap environment they have, with guys like Crosby and Malkin and Letang likely sunsetting in a couple of seasons' time, if a Pettersson bet works out for them and he's able to find that extra gear offensively, then that could set them up for years to come. Now, before we continue on with the trade rumor talk, today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks. Now, with the World Cup going on, the MLB and the Home Run Derby just happening, PrizePicks is the best place to get in on the sports action and make your prediction. All you gotta do is press more or less on different players and their stats and basically predict what you think is gonna happen in every single game. You get the opportunity to go through multiple players and go through maybe some deep cuts that maybe only you know about. But it's a great way to test your knowledge on all these different sports, and especially when the NHL gets back going in October, it's a great way to get even more invested in the games. But to join, it's super easy to do so. Just hit the link in the description down below, download the PrizePicks app, and make sure you use code HMA when you sign up. And when you play $5, you'll get $50 in light-ups instantly. But without further ado, let's get right back into the video. Now, on to the next player we're going to talk about today. We go into another guy that's kind of been in trade rumors lately, but has been up and down in terms of the actual interest from Winnipeg to deal him, and that is Hellebuyck. But recently, we've seen a couple of Western Conference teams linked to Hellebuyck that kind of surprised me. Now, we've seen a lot of smoke surrounding Hellebuyck and his future in Winnipeg and how unsure it might be, especially for him at 33 years old, as that team is in a kind of middling position in the NHL. We've heard a lot about Buffalo, some interest around Carolina, but a couple Western Conference teams here that could also be in the mix. And it's not surprising that Hellebuyck is getting a lot of interest. He, before this season at least, was one of the most consistent, I would argue the most consistent goaltender in the NHL out there. Really, from 2018 to 2025, he had just been so good every single year. Last season was a bit of a murky ride for him, but Winnipeg in general was just kind of off last season, though I think he certainly made up for it, at least to me, at the Olympics this year. The question is, though, who are these Western Conference teams that could be in on Hellebuyck, and how likely are they to actually get him in the end? And this coming from Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Read Connor Hellebuyck. Buffalo and San Jose are my 2 favorites, with Carolina as a distant third. The San Jose Sharks in on Connor Hellebuyck. But I will say this, it's not that shocking when you think about it, because I think for San Jose, they've made it abundantly clear how much they want to upgrade their whole team this next year. Whether you agree or not with the Darnell Nurse, the Jacob Trouba, the Mason Marchment acquisitions, it's clear they're going in a contending direction. They want to fill out that roster. They want to take some major steps. And really the only major question now for them is the goaltending and what it looks like next year. I personally still believe that Yaroslav Askarov has the chops to be a starter in this league, but he's 24 years old now, and I think this next season is a bit of a make or break year for him. He played a lot this last year and was pretty okay, pretty rough at times, was just inconsistent, which is not unexpected for a young goaltender. But I think in Askarov's case of how much hype and potential he's had behind him, this is the opportunity to really show up. But if San Jose isn't confident in him actually breaking out like he needs to, then I could see them pivoting and maybe potentially trading into Askarov in a Hellebuyck deal, which for a team like Winnipeg might be one of the better offers they could get, especially if they want to go in a more goaltending direction. If it's a team like Buffalo, you're probably getting an Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen back. If it's a team like Carolina, a player like Pyotr Kochetkov might not be the worst idea in the world, but I feel like Askarov brings the most potential out of those three goalies. And with the younger group that Winnipeg is starting to build, Askarov would fit those plans pretty well. So I think there is an opportunity here for San Jose and Winnipeg to make something happen. It's just going to be a matter of how much San Jose wants to trade for Hellebuyck, because we know that asking price is going to be astronomical, even if goalies never quite get the asking price we think they will get. If it were up to me before the season, I would just rather give Askarov the shot and not trade for a 33-year-old goaltender, but San Jose just signed Jacob Trouba and traded for Darnell Nurse, so I don't know what timeline they're actually working on here. Now, the other team to mention here is the Colorado Avalanche, who also are swirling around Connor Hellebuyck as well. Some speculation around the Avs and Jets Connor Hellebuyck. According to reports relayed by Friedman, some around the league believe Colorado at least explored the possibility of acquiring him. By the way, at a couple teams say to me they wondered if Colorado took a shot at Hellebuyck. I don't know how they can make that work, and I don't know what they would offer, and I'm not sure about Winnipeg would want to see that, but there were a couple teams that were like they kind of suspected the Avalanche considered it. Now, I don't see it as very likely, but the fact the Avs are in Hellebuyck is just wild to me. I mean, I feel like it would have to include a Mackenzie Blackwood or something going back to Winnipeg, but at that point, why would you do that if you're Colorado? You're already cap-strapped as much as you are. I think you'd rather just get a bit more creative in other directions if you already have given Mackenzie Blackwood the opportunity to shine. So I feel like for the Avs, I can see why they poke around, but I don't see it nearly as likely as a San Jose or a Buffalo or Carolina. Now, we've talked about some guys that could have interest, but we go on to a player that is extremely likely to be traded soon, and that is Frank Vatrano, who isn't a part of a massive deal or anything, or at least not likely to be, but is an extremely likely cap dump who went from likely to maybe less likely to extremely likely now because of the Leo Carlson offer sheet and the looming new contract of Cutter Gauthier, which, by the way, could be upwards of $15 million on a long-term deal. Insanity. But in Vatrano's case, he makes $4.5 million, and for this Ducks team that needs to get rid of some cap, Vatrano is the most likely option just because of his lack of role with the Ducks, which could mean the Ducks might have to pay to get rid of Vatrano, but this last year, it was a brutal season for him. 9 points in 50 games after putting up 45 points and 60 points the year before. A real fall from grace. But it's just a situation where Vatrano doesn't quite fit what the Ducks are building anymore, and they just have to get rid of him at this point. They tried to keep that contract in it and not have to pay to get rid of it, but at this point, it seems like the Ducks need to pay and could be paying a pretty hearty price to get rid of him too. Considering you have some rebuilding teams of Vancouver that have already gone after other contracts like Brendan Gallagher as cap dumps, I feel like the options and the suitors for Vatrano are quickly shrinking, and the Ducks and Paverbeek need to make this deal quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more than like a third-round pick a part of a Vatrano deal just to get rid of that contract, because at this point, I don't think any team is doing the Ducks any favors. Now, the last player I wanted to mention today is not something that is going to be a part of trade rumors or anything, but I did want to give a shout out to, and that is Viggo Bjork signing his ELC and actually not returning to the SHL, which I thought was the original plan for him. Viggo Bjork was one of my favorite players in this last class, and even though he's a very tiny little boy, he can absolutely play, man. Whether it's the skill, whether it's the tenacity under pressure, how smart he is as a puck distributor and a puck protector. He had a great SHL season and got more and more opportunity as it went. And everything I've been starting to hear about Viggo Bjork's placement in Winnipeg has maybe even led to him getting an NHL contract, which we did see with the Jets this year. And I wouldn't be surprised, folks. The Jets kind of need a second-line center next year. I wouldn't be shocked if Viggo Bjork is in that spot in Game 1. Everything I hear is that the Jets absolutely adore Viggo Bjork, as they rightfully should, but there's a difference between loving Bjork and sending him back to the SHL for another season, and having him not just in the NHL immediately, but getting big opportunity. From what I've learned, it's his opportunity to lose that top 6 spot. And I think in Viggo Bjork's case, with how hard he works, with how well he plays consistently, now I don't think he's necessarily going to have a dominant rookie season, but I could see something like the Ben Kindle rookie year that we saw last year, where he goes under the radar, puts some good numbers up on the board, really plays a great refined game, and projects himself immediately onto that future. But those are my thoughts on the latest trade rumors and news that we've seen around the NHL. A lot to talk about, but a lot of fun discussing it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. Comment down below your thoughts on all these players and where you think they'll end up. And of course, share it with all the hockey fans you guys know online. And if you guys want more videos, you guys can become channel members today by hitting that join button next to the subscribe button, or hitting the link in the description down below. And you guys get exclusive videos, and you're a part of every video of all these other beauties. But I'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.